Hello, everyone. Welcome to Random Encounter 306 or 306. My name is John O'Logan, and it's that time of year again. I'm in Nova Scotia. So I visit my parents every year for about a month, and it's usually in August. Now it's in September, which is totally fine. Actually, the temperatures are kind of nice. And it's my opportunity to inform you that, yes, in fact, Abercrombie Video is still in business in Pictou County. I genuinely don't know how. I am baffled that a video store still exists.
I don't think there's a single one in Ohio, so that's impressive. Like my entire state doesn't have one, but
Yeah,
Abercrombie
and
Video is still going. That's
it's
amazing.
not like New Glasgow has internet. We can get Netflix. Like it exists. It's not like we are living like in a place without the internet. But no, Abercrombie Video is still there, and I am baffled by that and delighted. So if you hadn't noticed, the previous episode of Random Encounter was an episode out of time because I was traveling to Nova Scotia and doing all that jazz. So to anyone who, if you run a podcast out there, my advice to you is record an episode out of time because boy, those things are useful. You just need to put in all the effort to research and record and edit an episode. Then you put it in a drawer until you need it, and it is so great to just be like, episode done, whew, finished. But this episode is live. It's live in the sense that we're recording it, last Tuesday to you, but that's okay because sometimes older things are better. And speaking of older things, today I'm joined by Zach.
Yeah, I feel that. I just turned 39 and I'm feeling old.
Yeah, see, the thing about this is that I'm older than you. I'm 40, So, given that we are both old, I think it is only appropriate that we chat about some older games, specifically older games that have recently come out in video game compilations. But,
Lunar,
but
sorry. Spoiler alert.
it's fine. But first, how about a little bit of news? You know what? I'm doing my news first because you interrupted me. So we're doing my news first, and we get to your news. My news is that there was a RGG summit, as they often have them, where they announce new Yakuza everything. Usually they announce a new cologne based on Kiryu or a leather jacket based on it doesn't matter. It's usually like, oh, that's really lame. But this time they gave us something that no one was expecting, and yet when it came out, everyone was like, yeah, that makes sense. So it's the latest Like a Dragon spinoff. It's Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. So this is clearly Infinite Wealth. They created Hawaii, and it's an astonishing map. It's a wonderful environment, amazing. Clearly, they want to do something else with it. So presumably, they asked themselves, well, what else can we do with it? Well, Majima has an eye patch. That screams pirate to me. So it's literally a game where Majima is a pirate. He washes up on the shores of Hawaii with amnesia, and there's a tiger cub for some reason, and he ends up in like clearly some kind of a Yakuza war going on, and the only logical thing is to commandeer a pirate ship, dress up as a pirate, and assemble a pirate crew because it's Yakuza. This looks nuts. It looks crazy. It's still Like a Dragon, and it's using real-time combat. It's not using turn-based combat. So that seems to be what they're doing nowadays. They seem to have gotten away from doing the Judgment games, presumably because of some character rights issues, I would imagine. Yeah. So it seems like the Gaidens are going to be used to continue the action-oriented combat, and the main line is going to be continuing the turn-based combat. So this looks amazing. It looks just insane.
I agree. Like I've only played, I guess I say only because I'm talking to you. I played 4 Yakuza games and both of the Judgment games. And I'm up and down on them, but like one thing I am not up and down on is Majima. Yakuza 0 is a masterpiece, and Majima is a phenomenal presence in all the other games. And this is so bonkers. Like apparently, like I saw this. This could be untrue. So someone please fact check me if I'm wrong on this. But like apparently this leaked like a month or two ago, and people saw it and they were like, "That's so ridiculous," that like they just dismissed it. And that's what the game is. And only in the Like a Dragon series could this happen. And I will certainly be buying this day one. My wife is obsessed with pirates. and I am obsessed with Majima. So it's a match made in heaven, and I'm super excited to play this game.
Yes, like a dragon, strengthening marriages everywhere. Look, I'm not debating it. Like, Amanda hasn't even played Like a Dragon, but she just adores wandering over to me and being like, I prefer this game out of context. Because as hilarious as it is in context, out of context is even more so. So she has this knack of like wandering into the room when like Majima is entering the arena with fireworks and stuff like that. She's like, that's all I need to know. I'm good. I don't need to play
are
the
there
rest
a
of the
bunch
game.
of old dudes in diapers just wander into the room? Perfect timing.
Yep. And she is like, this is great, and I want to know no context at all. So this is going to be, it'll be amazing. It'll be fantastic. It looks like it's going to be fun in a way that I think Man Who Erased His Name was not. Clearly, Majima has a little, I mean, he has amnesia in this game, so he has way less baggage than Kiryu. Hell, he has less baggage than Majima, although he's clearly still, Majima. So very, very excited for this. It's coming out in February. I can't tell. I'm probably going to ask the review manager if I can review this one.
I think I'll probably say yes. I think.
Yes. Woe is to anyone who gets in my way. So that's my news. But in other news, we just, and by just, I mean, we just got out of a PlayStation State of Play like a half hour ago. So we got some amazing news from it, some really, really interesting RPG stuff. So we have Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered was announced. Monster Hunter Wilds got a release date. We've got, what else? What other RPG stuff came out? Zach, did any other RPG news come? Oh, Fantasia Neo Dimension is coming out. Apparently Keanu Reeves is now playing Shadow as Sonic the Hedgehog. I think that's pretty much it, isn't it?
Well, I don't think that's just it. I don't think so.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, I know I teased. This is funny because this episode was going to be focused on 2 compilation of games, like old games. And the discussion question, which we may or may not get to today, was going to be like, hey, what compilation would you like to see in the future? And Zach's answer was
Lunar.
Yeah. And now we don't need to do the discussion question anymore.
We don't. Yeah. I mean, like, so we're getting Lunar, both the first one and the second one. So Silver Star Story complete and Eternal Blue complete. It looks like it looks like from what we've seen that is based on the complete versions of them, but it's like the cutscenes are in full HD. The sprites look amazing. Like it looks like they are really like lovingly caring for these sprites. And I'll admit that like we've got some new English voice acting as well, and no John Truitt for Galleon means like boo for me because I only like John Truitt for Galleon. But like I can deal with all of that. Like the idea that we can play these games on a modern console, especially Eternal Blue, because Eternal Blue hasn't been re-released since the PlayStation.
Eternal Blue is so good.
Yeah, and Eternal Blue, I think a lot of people think is better than Silver Star Story. So like it's. If you're an RPG fan, like I cannot imagine not being excited for this. Like we started as LunarNet, and I've been following this site since we were LunarNet, and I am so jazzed. I know that I wrote a review for the Silver Star that a lot of people were unhappy about, but I promise you that my review of the Silver Star Story complete would be much higher. So I am so excited for these 2 games.
You should give it a 64. So there's a bunch of stuff coming out with this. So it's now widescreen. It's not just enhanced pixel art. We're also getting HD animated cutscenes. So all the cutscenes have been remastered. Like you said, all new English voice acting. The thing I am most excited about is it sounds like we're going back to the original lyrics for the opening instead of the ones that came out after, which drive me crazy. I know that technically the lyrics are closer to the original Japanese, but they like lack poetry, and there's like weird. The cadence is really weird in it, and it's even more disconcerting because they got the same singer to sing the new lyrics as sang the original. But we're back to the good old fashioned ridiculous anime opening cutscene lyrics, and I couldn't be happier about that.
I mean, the anime opening of the Silver Star, the Sega CD version, is like the best part of that game. So I'm very excited.
Yeah. It's also going to be available in German and French, which is kind of cool. So, we'll have to talk about Rhythm Encounter and see if they can do all 4 versions of the opening. One in English, Japanese, German, and French.
I mean, I think we can make it happen.
Probably. So, that's the news. And it's good news. It's good news for RPG fans. It's certainly good news for us because, like, again, it's in our DNA. And I am just delighted by all of this news. Really delighted by all of this news. So yeah, video game compilations. They are awesome because not only do they give modern gamers a chance to play some of the best games from previous generations, but they also come with tons of quality of life features, bells and whistles that really make them worth it. Sometimes they come with remastered graphics. For example, the Lunar Remastered Collection. But I think the thing that I like most about them is that you usually get like a whole bunch of games for the price of one. And yeah, they're old games, but that's a lot of gameplay for a relatively cheap price. And two of the companies that have been really excelling in the compilation sphere lately are Konami and Capcom. Arguably, this is the only way that Konami is excelling lately.
I don't really think it's arguable. I think that's the only way they're excelling for us, at least.
Yeah, tell me about it. But thankfully, they seem to be really, really good at them. So the first thing we're going to be talking about today is something Zach reviewed a few days ago, and that is the Castlevania Dominus Collection. This is a collection of Castlevania games that came out on the DS. So before this, we had the Castlevania Advance Collection. So on the Game Boy Advance, we had a trilogy of 3 games that were Circle of the Moon in 2001, Harmony of Dissonance in 2002, and Aria of Sorrow in 2003. I cannot imagine the amount of crunch these people would have had to go through to do that. But wow. And, they were really, really good remasters. But those 3 games were followed up by 3 further Castlevania, Metroidvania games on the Nintendo DS a few years later. And those games were Dawn of Sorrow, Portrait of Ruin, and Order of Ecclesia. And so now we have this collection of the DS games, and it's fantastic. So before I let you go into this, my story with this, I think I mentioned it before, either here or in Retro Encounter, is I was working at Canada's Wonderland, the theme park in Ontario, and I was doing their Halloween haunt show. It was a show called Fangs, and I was playing a very edgy vampire, let's put it that way. And it was like, my hair was like black with red frosted tips, and I was completely white, and I was singing like heavy metal music, and I think my opening song was Love Me Dead by Ludo, and it was a mixed experience, but it was a massive trek to get up to Vaughan every day from downtown Toronto. So I'm just going to admit it. I had a flash card, and I had all of the advanced games and all of the DS games on the flash card. And throughout the course of this, 3 months that I was employed there, I played through all of the advanced games and all of the DS games. And I have very, very fond memories of them. I recall them being absolutely exquisite Metroidvanias. So yeah, when I heard this was coming out, I was just like, this is awesome. I don't have time to review 3 games. But you know who does? Zach, because you haven't played them before, and you really, really enjoyed them.
I did, yeah. I've actually never played any of the DS Castlevania games. Like, I didn't get into Metroidvanias until... I played Super Metroid when it came out, but that was I didn't know what it was. I was 9 when I played it. But I didn't really get into Metroidvanias until probably after I started RPG Fan. I played Symphony of the Night. I played Time Spinner. And I also played Chasm for the site, which was a procedurally generated Metroidvania. And I sort of started to get into them, but as I played more of them, outside of Hollow Knight, which we don't cover, I wish we did. Most of them, I felt like were just kind of okay. I was I get a power, I have some platforming, blah 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 blah. But every time I played an Igavania Castlevania game, so I've played Aria, I played Symphony, I was like, this game is dope. So I'd wanted to play Order of Ecclesia in particular for years. Mm-hmm. And when this came out, it was an automatic, I'm going to buy it today, right this second. I'm going to play this game. And I loved these games. None of them are perfect. None of them are amazing. But for all my issues with Metroidvania games, Igavania games for me, just they hit in a certain way that makes them work for me.
Yeah. They're exceptional examples of Metroidvania, because one of the interesting things is, up until this point, the only real Metroidvania Castlevania game was Symphony of the Night. Like the name of the subgenre wasn't really there yet. And I think that these 6 games, the 3 advanced games and the 3 DS games, were the ones that really cemented the phrase or the word Metroidvania as a thing. Like this is kind of what cemented the name of the subgenre. So they have, I mean, just based on that, you would expect them to be pretty good. And they are pretty damn good games.
Yeah, I think that the thing that surprised me about them, so like I had come off of playing Aria of Sorrow, which was the most recent like sort of Igavania, Metroidvania game that I'd played, and it was very similar in lots of ways to Symphony of the Night. There was a big map to explore, etc., and there was a little bit of addition in terms of you getting souls to have different abilities, but like all 3 of these games like iterate on the genre in ways that like I think still today are still worth playing. Like Dawn of Sorrow really iterates by having like one of the best maps in the series. Like it is so complex. There are so many things to do. And there are things I don't love about Dawn. Like I don't like soul grinding. Like I don't think it's fun, especially with the drop rates as they are with the luck stat being broken. Like there are things about Dawn of Sorrow that like make it frustrating. But like the map itself is so engaging, and there's always more to find. There's always more to see, and the combat is so fluid because you have so many different things to work with. And I think that's the thing that with all 3 of these games, like whatever you're doing, it works. You know what I mean? Like it if you're switching, which is what happens in Portrait of Ruin, where you're switching between 2 different characters, it happens quickly. It happens fast. It's buttery smooth. And as soon as you do it, like you have your other character, and like everything just works in concert the way that it's supposed to. Like there's no jank here. And I think that's really important. Like it just works so smoothly, and it works so well. And then if I think about like the glyph system in Order of Ecclesia, like you technically have to use MP for everything, but it almost turns into like a stamina system where like you use an attack and your MP recharges pretty quickly. And like all the systems kind of work really well with the game that it is. And like that kind of care and thought that is put into a game that comes out on a mobile platform, like I think it's just incredible. I think that all 3 games coming out for the DS, even the DS was huge, of course, but like it's just I think that all 3 of them are still worth playing, even as a person who's coming to Metroidvanias as a person who started in 2019 and coming back to them. Like they are still excellent.
Let's talk about that, because these were DS games, and unless I'm very much mistaken, the DS stood for dual screen, which is one of the reasons why we very rarely get DS remasters as compared to things that come out on the SNES or any of the other systems, because it's really, really difficult, because a lot of these games were designed with a dual screen UI interface. So what they did here, and I'm looking at some screenshots, is a choice. It looks like a real choice here.
I mean, like, so the screenshots you're seeing, all the ones they released are like sort of the default method of seeing things. There actually are some other methods you can use, but I think they're actually all inferior to that one. Like the method you're seeing is like you basically get in 4x3, you get sort of the game action, and then on the right you'll get the map, and you'll also get like sort of your stats, and then also some bestiary stats along the right side. And those are all things that you could have pulled up on that second screen. Whereas if you were just playing normally, it would just be the map and also the game action sort of on the DS. But you could change it to actually looking exactly like the DS, where it's, I think it's the game on top and the map on the bottom. And there are a couple of other options as well. And for the most part, it works. Like Dawn of Sorrow is the only one that really used touchscreen controls.
Of course it was, because the game just got released at the beginning of the DS lifecycle, and Nintendo was like, you have to use the stylus or you can't use our system.
Yeah, exactly. And like on the original DS, you had to draw these glyphs at the end of boss fights in order to kill the boss. But here you just hit a sequence of buttons. And it's not like difficult to hit the sequence of buttons. I have no idea. Like When I first started it, I was like, oh wait, are they going to make me draw with like my touchpad on my PS5? Luckily, the answer was no, because that would have been horrible. But I think even like the touch screens, like obviously I didn't play Dawn of Sorrow this way, but like I think that I would have struggled to use the touch screen, and the buttons were fine, but it's still a gimmick, and it's still a dumb gimmick.
It amuses me that presumably PlayStation was like, this is a PlayStation console. We don't do touchscreens here. We do QuickTime events.
That's pretty accurate. Apparently, if you got it on Switch, you actually can do the touchscreen controls if you want. But like, I can't imagine wanting to, because they seem terrible. And like some of the glyphs laid in Dawn of Sorrow are like really complicated, and they're hard enough just to do with QuickTime, like button presses. Drawing them and getting like one line slightly out of place, like I'm very glad I didn't play this on the DS for that reason.
I think another thing that really, I'm just looking at some of these screenshots here. I love the Nintendo DS. It's one of my all-time favorite systems, and it's easy to forget just how good 2D games could look on this system. Like, I think these games, their look, their overall design, everything is just terrific.
No, I agree. And it's not something that I talked about much in my review, unfortunately. It just didn't flow into the way that I was talking about it. But like, I think that looking at screenshots for the original DS, like it looks better here. But like, whether it looks better or not is not really the point of these games. Like, I think that it's all about the design. Like, and all of the areas look really cool. And I think about like Portrait of Ruin in particular, where you have all these really varied maps. That like some of them are supposed to be like downtown, like London, basically, or whatever. And like, I don't know how much they cleaned up the graphics, but they certainly did. But like, I think that like, regardless of how you're playing them, which if you don't want to drop $300, you should play them on a modern console now. Like the visual design of them is excellent.
Let's actually talk about each one of the games. So, Dawn of Sorrow is a rare direct sequel for the series. It continues on from the third Nintendo, or the third Game Boy Advanced game, Aria of Sorrow. So he plays the same character, Soma, who is essentially, I'm not gonna spoil that for anyone. If you haven't played these games, you can play them yourself. But basic idea is that there's a cult that wants to resurrect Dracula. You got to stop them. And yeah, as you mentioned, the Soul system is continued over from Aria, and it's a little clunky. It's a unique system, but it's a little clunky.
No, I mean, I think it's a cool system. Like, the idea is that you are, every time you defeat a boss, or an enemy rather, there is the possibility they're going to drop a soul, which will give you the opportunity to then use their skill, which is exactly the same as Aria of Sorrow. But the difference here is that, first of all, like, you need some of those souls that are random drops to explore parts of the map, which I found frustrating because I had to like look up a guide, which, you know, obviously like I wouldn't have had if I was playing it originally.
Yeah, super frustrating.
And then also a lot, like, excess souls are used to upgrade weapons, which is fine in theory, except for like some of like, I was using like a halberd. And like, to upgrade my halberd, I had to go get a 3-star drop, which I literally took an hour and a half. And this game took me maybe 8 hours to clear. It took me an hour and a half to go get that one freaking soul to then upgrade my halberd to the next thing. And this game actually gets kind of challenging if you don't upgrade your weapons. So like, soul grinding was, I thought, kind of a nightmare in this game. It was worse than Aria. And I definitely think that it dampens it significantly. But like, the rest of the game is awesome. Like, the bosses are good, even though they're a little recycled for Aria.
Great map design.
The map design is excellent. Like, the music is freaking awesome. Like, it's classic Castlevania, Igavania style, but the soul grinding is awful in my opinion. And so that definitely pulled me back from loving the experience as much as I should have. I actually like the other two games better because of it.
Yeah, Portrait of Ruin is, I guess, I don't know. I'm assuming that they said to Nintendo, look, we're not doing the dual screen touch thing anymore. How about 2 characters instead? So yeah, really interesting twist. You're playing as 2 different characters, Jonathan and Charlotte, both of whom have very different combat styles. Kind of a fun setting. It takes place in 1944, and you're jumping around from various locations. It's not just set in Dracula's castle. I think that this is, based on my memory, and again, it's been, God, almost 20 years since I played these things. But if I recall correctly, this was one of my favorites in the series. I really liked it.
Oh no, I mean the combat is excellent in Portrait of Ruin. Like the ability to switch back and forth between Jonathan and Charlotte is awesome. Like there are some fights where if you want to get the true ending, like you have to do certain things with Charlotte or you have to do certain things with Jonathan. But for the most part, and one of the things I really liked about it is like you can kind of tackle any challenge with either one of them. And they both have their advantages. Charlotte is a little more magic based. Jonathan's a little more melee based. And they have some like fun puzzles where you have to use both of them and like you have to make one stay in the other, but like none of them are obnoxious or obtuse. Like all the puzzles in the game are relatively easy to figure out. Like I never had to, look at anything up. And like the switching between them is so smooth, and the way that you can make both of them work together in tandem, like it's honestly a masterclass in how to have two characters on screen at the same time where you're really controlling what both of them do. Like I like it reminds me of like a Secret of Mana or like a Trials of Mana, but like in a way that is much better. Like you have so much control over how these characters behave, and it makes the combat really smooth and really fun. And even when the game gets a little repetitive, I think in the second half, like it's still fun to engage with what these characters are, how these characters control.
And then we move on to your favorite of the collection.
Oh, for sure. Order of Ecclesia. Order of Ecclesia is the best looking of these games, and it also has like the most interesting story. Like it's not like a Morris or a Belmont. It's someone who's sort of like living in between those things, and she has like amnesia, and a person who's close to her steals her powers. And you have to go get them. But there's also like this Suikoden like quest system where like you're building up a town, and as you build up that town, you get the opportunity to buy more things. Like the story here was actually legitimately like not bad, which I can't say for any of the other ones. And so like I really enjoyed sort of building up that town and getting a feel for it. But the thing that really sets Order of Ecclesia apart is the combat. Like the glyph system is so great. Like you have the ability to use two different attacks at any given moment, either using the X or the Y button. And it plays into that. Like it knows that you have that opportunity. So weaknesses are really important. You can do some really interesting combos with the different glyphs that you get. The glyph drop system is way better. You're going to get most of the overpowered glyphs in this game just by playing the game, as opposed to something like Dawn of Sorrow. And it's really freaking hard. Like it is the hardest Castlevania game outside of like an OG Castlevania that I've ever played. But it plays well, and there are some problems with it. Like it's very linear in its first half. Like you're going through like sort of these levels after levels after levels until you get to Dracula's castle. And so it's not perfect, but like the combat is just so excellent in Order of Ecclesia that I think it overwhelms any other issues I have with it.
Yeah, there's a lot of RPG in this particular title too, because not only
for sure.
they're side quests, they're like the glyphs are equipable. So like equipable weapons, and there's the usual leveling up, that kind of thing. So it's generally, you're 100% right, it's generally considered to be the best of the DS Castlevania games. But you want to know what? That's I mean, that's great, but like the other two games, they're also good. They're very, very good.
For sure.
You're getting three excellent games in this collection, along with two that are a little less excellent. Do you want to tell us about them?
I mean, so it also gets packaged with Haunted Castle, which is not in our coverage, which is an arcade game from the 80s, which was like, I think it technically was released after Castlevania 1, before the second one. And it's just a side-scrolling action game. It is insanely difficult. It was definitely a money eater. Give us your coins because you're going to die constantly. But one of the cool things they did in this collection was they added Haunted Castle Revisited, which is totally brand new to this collection. And it takes that arcade look and it sort of updates it to like a more late 90s style. And it makes the game significantly less challenging. It changes sort of the level design to be more fair. And it's actually kind of fun. Like I only got through a few levels of it because, like, again, it's not in our coverage, so I knew I didn't need to play all the way through it for review, but it's kind of fun, and it just shows like I want to give Konami the credit. But I don't think I can. Like, I'm going to give M2 I'm going to give M2 the credit, because M2, every time they touch something that is remastered, whether it's Phantasy Star or this or the Advance Collection, like they just do a banging job, like of just like putting it together. Like other things in the collection, like you have like a rewind function, which I might have used once or twice in a couple of the games.
They're hard games.
Yeah, they're real hard. At least Order of Ecclesia is. And they give you the ability to save at any point, like all these little quality of life things. Like it reminds me of the last time I beat Zelda 2. The only way I did that was through save states. And like this is the same. This is the same concept. So like even if you don't want to learn every boss perfectly like you would have the original, it's still pretty accessible. You still have to learn it. You still can't like not get hit or whatever. But like it's a really great collection, and M2 just continues to kill it with their collection of Konami games. And I wish they were working on my favorite series for the collection. I don't think they are, but yeah. Konami collections are good. Everything else Konami, not so good.
What games are those? What is there a game collection coming out at some point in the future?
There might be one in March. Suikoden, maybe.
Yeah, well, we'll check back in March and see if that happens.
Yeah, we will.
No, sorry, that was mean of me. I don't mean to mock your hope, Zach.
No, you can mock it. It's okay.
No one deserves to have their hope mocked. And yet it's yeah. But you know what? They have released the two big Castlevania collections for these Metroidvanias.
I mean, I think that like every Igavania game is available on modern consoles now, right? Like I think all of them
you're
are.
Right.
Yeah,
I think you're right.
It's awesome.
And they're excellent. Like all of them are very, very good. Even the ones that aren't amazing are still, I think, worth playing. And for this, you're getting 3 full-scale Castlevania games, Metroidvania games, in one. I think it's a tremendous package, and the quality of life features just make it even more worth it.
Oh, no, I agree. I think that it was certainly helpful not having to draw the glyphs and having the rewind function and also having the save function. But like at the end of the day, like I appreciated only having to drop $25 for one game that I was about to drop 124, and then I got the other 2 games for free, basically. So it's if you're interested in the genre, even if you've only played the modern ones, like this is where the genre starts to iterate in ways that you still see today. It starts to iterate. Like I feel like I see a little Order of Ecclesia and Hollow Knight sometimes. Like I think that you're starting to see them play with the genre in a way that allows it to be different, like in things like Nine Souls or Ender Lilies or things like that. Like that you see this iteration from what it was originally, the experimentation, and it's still worth playing. And it's not just a history lesson. It's still fun.
They're still good games.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let's move on to another company that does some pretty good compilations, and that is Capcom. I mean, they've been releasing Street Fighter and Marvel vs. Capcom various compilations lately. That it also kind of like this game with the Castlevania arcade game. They just threw in the Punisher for some reason into like a package full of nonstop fighting games, and it's like that's a beat 'em up. That's not a fighting game, but who cares because it's the first time it's ever been available. But another, personally my favorite series that they've been doing this with is Ace Attorney. So for the last, since 2012, I think, they've been repackaging their standalone games into really, really well done remasters. So there was the Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney trilogy that included Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney, Justice for All, and Trials and Tribulations. And then they followed that up many, many years after that with a Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. And this was the Great Ace Attorney games that were never released in the West. And this was the first time it was released here. So those two. Then they released the Apollo Justice trilogy, which was a compilation of the last 3 mainline Ace Attorney games. And finally, they've, except for one spin-off starring Professor Layton, they ran out of games, and the only ones they could release were the Ace Attorney Investigations series, Ace Attorney Investigations Mile Edgeworth, and Ace Attorney Investigations 2 Prosecutor's Gambit. the second which was never released in the West. So now we have the entire series, and in some really just absolutely fantastic compilations. So, like I said, this is a compilation of these two games, and the difference between the mainline Ace Attorney games and the Investigations collections, it's not just the main character. The main character here, instead of Phoenix Wright, is Miles Edgeworth, his prosecutor rival in the first game and eventual close friend. But this game doesn't really take place in the courtroom, even though Miles Edgeworth is still a prosecutor. In this reality, in this world, in Japanifornia, prosecutors work very closely with police, and it's like the prosecutors are the main investigator into crimes.
I think that's actually like kind of true in European countries, at least from what I watch on TV. So I think it's based on something at least.
Yeah, I'm glad that there's at least some reality to the Ace Attorney series. So all of this takes place pretty much in the crime scene. Miles Edgeworth is in a location. He stumbles upon a murder or some kind of crime, and he must investigate it. And using the Ace Attorney system of interrogation, pressing people for more information, and then pointing out contradictions, you kind of advance the story. So in the review, I said that if the Ace Attorney series is Matlock, then the Ace Attorney Investigation series is Columbo, where it's just every single episode is just unmasking a different criminal. And of course, there is an overarching story that's actually between both games. The second game takes place like 3 days after the first is over. And I love these games. I really do. I played the first one when it came out on the DS. I thought it was wonderful. Then the sequel was announced and was never released in the West. Eventually, there was a fan localization of it, which I'll talk about in just a minute. And what makes these games different than the Ace Attorney series, not just the setting and the main character and the psychology of the main character, is the way you control it. So in the Ace Attorney games, everything is kind of, you're set with you get shown a scene and you click around with the stylus. If you're playing on the DS, you click around with the stylus on the scene to investigate things. But it's kind of like from Phoenix's point of view. Here, it's a point-and-click adventure game style interface where Miles Edgeworth has an actual sprite on the screen and you move him around the screen to investigate various things in locations. Looks awesome, worked really well on the DS, doesn't work really well on modern systems. You'd expect, especially on PC, that it would basically work like a classic point-and-click adventure game where you click on an item, Miles Edgeworth runs over to the item, and you interact with that item. But it's not. You need to be facing in the exact right direction towards that item in order for the little prompt to come up. And with a mouse, it's damn near impossible sometimes to align him properly. So eventually I just said, I'm done. This is so annoying. I'm just going to use a controller. And my experience improved immensely. But it was like a missed opportunity that they couldn't refine the point-and-click style a little bit more. This game is it's not just a re-release, it is a full remaster. They completely redid all of the backgrounds in high res, and they actually gave us a choice. You can play as the original pixel sprites, but they also now have like brand new, they're calling it chibi style character sprites that are like, they match the backgrounds in terms of detail. I just don't know about them because they look very close to the characters that you see in cutscenes, but not quite. So there's a tiny bit of a conflict between the two art styles, which eventually stopped bothering me. For a little while there, though, I was like, it just looks kind of weird that we have they're so close together, but they're not quite. It was weird.
I mean, obviously, I haven't played this, but I feel like that's like an issue that I find in a lot of remasters. Think about like the Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9.
Yeah.
Where like the backgrounds are all still like super blurry and like the character models are super sharp and look good together. And so like, I don't know. I remember when I reviewed like the Final Fantasy 7 port to Switch like years ago. It was distracting. Like it's just distracting when things when they clash like that. So I totally understand that.
Yeah, and this is almost the reverse because I tried playing it with, I didn't like the chibi sprites at first, so I was like, that's no big deal. I'll just play it with the original pixel art. But it's the literal reverse of the Final Fantasy problem, which is all of the backgrounds are now high resolution, and then you had like DS resolution pixel characters running around them, which can be striking, but just look not quite right, if you understand what I mean
Yeah,
by
no,
that.
no, that makes sense to me. Like it's that sort of like I think it's about that contrast, right? Like either way, like it
Yeah.
doesn't feel right.
Yeah. And the quality of the games, I mean, if you like Ace Attorney games, you're really going to like these games. You kind of have to, well, I mean, you have to like the style of storytelling here. But if you do, they're bangers. So the first one is pretty good. It feels like a spin-off that doesn't quite have its legs yet. The cases are solid. Some of the characters and villains are okay, but it's not quite as strong as the mainline series. But then in the second game, they use the first game as a launching point. I compared in the review to season one of a spinoff is usually trying to find its legs independent of its parent show. But then the second season, it really takes off. And that's kind of what happened here, because the second game, Prosecutor's Gambit, is excellent. Might tell one of the best stories in the entire series. Miles Edgeworth is confronted at every turn with experiences that challenge his belief in the law and challenge his idea of what his job is. Like, should he be trying to protect the innocent, or should he be trying to find the truth at all costs? And really, really compelling stuff. Still full of ridiculous coincidences and things like that, but that's just the style of the game. But big fan of it. But I'm going to talk very briefly about the fan localization. So the original fan localization of Ace Attorney Investigations 2, they called it Prosecutor's Path. And the team who did it, they did a full localization of it. They even recorded new voices for the objections and take that's and things like that. They did an outstanding job taking the original Japanese names and making them into Ace Attorney style pun-filled delights. And the style, the tone, the dialogue, everything about it was very, very authentic to the Ace Attorney series and the first Ace Attorney Investigations game. They did an astonishing job of it. I really remember loving the fan localization. Now, this is the official localization, so it gives us a real unique opportunity to look at how a company can localize a game versus fans. And I gotta say, it's kind of 50-50. Like, there are places where I prefer the fan version, and there are places where I think the original one is better. Some of the pun names in the fan localization, I think, are way better. Like, one of your main, I don't know if I call him your antagonist. He's an irritating little but he's like this. He's a little prosecutor who is your rival and who is a spoiled brat and who is also an idiot and who constantly says, his name in this version of the game is Eustace Winner. And he's like, I'm the winner. I always win. But in the fan game, his name is Sebastian de Best, which is, I think, a better pun. I think
that's excellent.
He constantly says, hey, I'm the best. And it's, I don't know why. There's something that is,
it's so on the nose that, like, it's delightful.
Yeah, I think Sebastian de Best is just funnier. It's also, it makes him, they're both asses, but it also makes him slightly less annoying than, I don't know why. It seems to bother me less when he was walking around declaring that he was the best instead of walking around declaring that he is the winner. And I don't know it, but on the whole, both versions are exceptional. In the review, I speculate that at some point, I suspect that hackers will probably get in and they might try to inject the fan translation into this.
I bet you people are already working on that, man.
Probably. But really, really interesting to see two different interpretations of the same game and where that can go. I will admit, they made there's one supporting character in the game who is your he is a defense attorney, and he knew your dad, and he comes off as kind of a big creep in the fan translation, where he's a little too little too handsy, shall we say. And there's some of that here too, but it's like toned down a little bit because clearly Capcom was like, oh, can't go that far.
Yeah, I mean, like I think it's always an interesting thing that because like one of the reasons that Mother 3 is never localized, right, is because they're worried about things like that. And I think that like looking at the way that localization works, like taking games that are a little bit older and like sort of adapting them to modern audiences in a way that makes sense, in a way that works, is always interesting to me. I'm not sure that it's really possible with something like Mother 3. But yeah, it's cool to hear they're doing it here.
And also, it's just, this is what I love. Game compilations are great. Ace Attorney game compilations are amazing values because these are not short games. Like you're getting around 15 to 20 hours of gameplay for each one because they're visual novels. And they're engaging visual novels too, because there's, you have to figure it out yourself. But like, you're getting a lot of game for a reasonable price here. And like I said, if you want to play the Ace Attorney games now, every single one, except for the Professor Layton crossover game, is now available on modern systems, on everything. So if you wanted to start playing it, I would. Now, mind you, I would not start here. These games are okay. Like there are different eras of Ace Attorney. There's the original trilogy, and then there is a massive time jump 7 years in the future, and then there's the second trilogy, and then there's the Great Ace Attorney that takes place hundreds of years in the past. This is a continuation with the storyline style and many of the characters of the original trilogy. So if you want to get the most out of this game and you want to get a lot of the inside jokes, you really do need to play the first 3 games first. It's not like, I would argue that most people could probably play Apollo Justice, Ace Attorney trilogy, and certainly the Great Ace Attorney without having played the first trilogy at all. It just kind of would work. But this you need to have played the first trilogy, which I think is fine because I think they're awesome games. Yeah. Anyway, I really liked it. I thought it was great. And Capcom, where you've finally run out of old Ace Attorney games that you can put into collections.
Time to make a new one.
You need to release new ones. Look, Capcom, you need to release new ones, not even to give us the games. You need to release new ones so 10 years from now you can put them into a compilation and release them. That should be since that seems to be your primary, your modus operandi. That's what you should be doing. Release 3 games, so a few years from now, you can put them in a new collection.
Yeah.
Done.
It certainly seems like a moneymaker. So, like, I have a question. So, yeah. I have been interested in Ace Attorney for years, but I've never played them. And I either participated or coached mock trial for 20 years, 25 years almost, which means that I'm very familiar with like court procedure and what objections are supposed to look like, and what cross-examination looks like and what direct examination looks like. And I will admit, like every time I play Judgment, for example, which definitely steals from Ace Attorney, I know that, like I get enraged at the court scenes because they're so stupid. And it doesn't lean into the stupidity enough. Like there are a lot of shows I watch where I'm like, oh my gosh, that's not a real objection, blah, 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 blah. Is Ace Attorney something that I would enjoy as someone who is interested in them? Like I like ridiculous storytelling. I like stupidity, but like who also wants like some degree of like reality presented in court proceedings.
Zach, these are the most realistic courtroom simulators ever released.
That's not my question.
at least I'm assuming they are if you live in Japan, because holy crap, are they bat nuts if you live in the West. Okay, the game's system of the courtroom system in this game is not based on our system. It's based on the Japanese system, which I think is a confrontational system where the defense attorney and prosecutor are arguing with each other, essentially nonstop. And that's where it starts, but presumably that system has actual rules. Here you don't. Especially when you're playing as a defense attorney, everyone kind of considers defense attorneys to be scum, including the prosecutor and the judge. So you are never given the benefit of the doubt. The prosecutor can routinely pull evidence completely out of their The number of times in the first couple of games where the prosecutor will be like, you'll come up with some kind of conclusion that clears your client, and the prosecutor will be like, "Oh yeah, you're working off the old autopsy report. I have a new updated autopsy report," and they'll put it down, and you'll read it, and you'll be like, "This completely invalidates my argument. Okay, you suck."
Okay, well, that sounds insane.
Here's the thing: I think you will love it because, unlike the judgment games, where the courtroom system is presented in a semi-serious style, here it's so extravagantly over the top and silly and stupid in places that it actually works really well. Mind you, it is going to be, there are points where you're going to be pulling out your hair and being like, no, that's not how this works at all. In any reality, that's not how this works. But I still think it is silly enough. I mean, I assume in Japan, here it's a fantasy. In Japan, I'm assuming it's a satire of their system.
That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah. So I think you'd like it. Honestly, I think most people would like it. They're extremely charming games. There's a lot of crossover, I feel, between the sense of humor of the Ace Attorney games and the Like a Dragon games. I guess because they're both technically Japanese simulators, Japan simulators. But I mean, my love of Ace Attorney very much eventually played into my love of the Like a Dragon series. So I recommend them, and you can get them cheap.
Yeah, I own like 8 of them. So I definitely like want to play them. It's just like every time I think about it, I'm like, but am I gonna be annoyed?
You'll be annoyed, but I think I think it will charm you anyway.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I honestly, if you own Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney trilogy,
I do.
Just load up the first 2 cases and see if you like it. The characters are extraordinarily endearing and delightful, and it's just a really wonderful series. And my God, TGS is coming up soon, and it would be real nice to get a new Ace Attorney game in there. Real nice.
I know that the people of RPG Fan would lose their minds. So.
I don't care. I don't care. Make it. You know what? Make it a pirate spin-off. I would be fine with that. You could do Courtroom on the High Seas. That would be cool. I'll take it.
That sounds awesome. I know I would play that. So.
Just put an eye patch. Just put an eye patch on Phoenix. It would work great. As I'm certain that a certain future Like a Dragon title will prove.
No kidding.
So, I mean, I still kind of want to ask the discussion question now, because I know that you're.
I have another answer too. Don't worry.
All right. So the discussion question, as I mentioned early on, it's not even going to be a discussion question. Really, it's just going to be Zach and I wish casting. So, what game compilation would you like to see next? So it can be any game compilation, just a collection of old games now put into one, hopefully with some quality of life improvements. If they really want to break the bank, maybe they do a full remaster where they have remastered graphics and sound and stuff like that. But what is a package of games that you would like to see?
Xenosaga 1, 2, and 3. Easy. I'm a huge Xeno fan. I've played, all the Blade games. I've played Gears, and I played the first Xenosaga game, and I was like, I really like this game, but like a fast forward button would be awfully nice. And you hear so many things about the Xenosaga series, 2 in particular, which is why I haven't played it yet. Like, I'm like, oh gosh, the combat system, I hear it's so challenging and so frustrating and blah, 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 blah. And like, just some things to kind of, take the edges off of that to get to the like incredible storytelling that I am certain that Xenosaga 2 and 3 are going to do. I don't understand like how they released Batten Kaitos 1 and 2, which like I haven't played yet, but I want to, and how that was a good financial decision. And releasing the Xenosaga games was not a good financial decision, because like there are so many more Xeno fans now than there were when those games came out. Like it baffles me that they have not released them, and like apparently like they did like sort of an analysis, and that analysis showed that it wouldn't be profitable. Like, how can Batten Kaitos be profitable and Xenosaga isn't? So like, I feel like the Xenosaga series is ripe for a compilation. I feel like it needs a compilation. I feel like people would buy it. And I feel like it gets to like put a spotlight on like the storytelling of that series, which from all accounts, and I've played 1 and I really enjoyed the storytelling in 1, but I'm intimidated by 2, and I know 3 is supposedly amazing, but like I want to experience these games and I want to play them, and I think that they would be an excellent choice for a compilation.
I think that's an absolutely excellent choice, and I think that your case for them is airtight. I am actually very surprised by that decision they made, because it seems like it's a no-brainer considering how many Xeno fans there are out there nowadays.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. Like Xenoblade Chronicles 3 like won our game of the year. Like Xenoblade Chronicles 2 brought many people into it.
To be fair, you did pack the ballot box.
Yeah, that's what I do. I'm the features manager, so I just decide. I already know what our game of the year is going to be this year. Let's be honest.
Tears of the Kingdom, baby.
Yeah.
No, what am I talking about? That was last year's that I didn't get.
It did. I think it finished in second, though, right? Last year was tough too. Yeah. I didn't even play Baldur's Gate 3. You can't accuse me of stuffing the box on that one.
I think Infinite Wealth is going to be the game to beat next year or this year. I think
it's gonna be tough. Although I hated the end of Infinite Wealth so much that it's gonna be. I'm definitely not voting for it. But like we'll see. So Anyway, that's my pick.
Okay, cool. Mine is this is never going to happen for a variety of reasons. But I think a no-brainer collection that would go great would be a Fallout Classic collection. So a collection of Fallout, Fallout 2, and Fallout Tactics Brotherhood of Steel. So Fallout and Fallout 2 are the isometric RPGs that started the Fallout series, and Fallout Tactics looks similar, but follows a tactical style of gameplay. These are games that may as well not exist in a modern sense. They're playable nowadays. You can get them. And there are like fan patches and improvements that make them considerably better. But Bethesda, who currently own the Fallout franchise, I don't know if they actually have the rights to the first couple of games in the series. They were developed by Interplay back in 1997 and a few years after that. And these games to me they're iconic. They are some of the best RPGs ever made, and they should have a very high quality remaster with new HD graphics and remastered backgrounds and UI elements. Like, these games should be available on modern consoles in a polished modern context, and I don't think it'll ever happen. Bethesda doesn't seem to have any interest whatsoever in revisiting the origins of the series because they are so different from what they release. That's not making fun of Bethesda. Bethesda gonna Bethesda. But I played Fallout, the first one, for the first time a few months ago during Fallout month, and I couldn't believe how much I loved it. I couldn't believe the tone of it, the style, the sense of humor, everything about it felt so good. And yeah, there are some obviously dated elements. It was a isometric RPG released in 1997 for the PC, but I feel like modern gamers would love these games if they were given the chance to play them in a way that is accessible to them. Because, Zach, let's face it, like,
I mean, now's the time.
Now is the time. I mean, for God's sake, you wouldn't have to do that much work for it. Fallout Season 2 will be coming out next year, presumably.
Right, exactly. That's my point. Yeah.
It'd be nice if Bethesda didn't drop the ball again and not have anything to release to capitalize on it like they did this time.
Yeah.
There is no way Bethesda expected Fallout to be as big a hit as it was. There is no way. Because if they did, they would have had a remaster of Fallout 3 or New Vegas, or they would have had something, anything, instead of like a piece of DLC for 76.
For the only Fallout game I've played, which is very unfortunate for me. I'm interested. I've never, outside of 76 for 4 hours in the beta, I have not played Fallout. And I don't have any desire to play Fallout because I had to play Fallout 76. It was my first assignment ever for the site, actually. Was playing a beta for this game, and I hated it.
You and I both, buddy. You and I both.
Yeah. Makes sense. But I thought it was trash. And I am still interested in the storytelling. Like every time, if on Retro Encounter, for example, People want to play New Vegas. Like, I'm there for it. Like, I'm still interested in the storytelling of Fallout. And I feel like 1997 wasn't that long ago. There is still, especially after Baldur's Gate, there's still an audience that is interested in this, and like lining it up with Fallout Season 2 makes sense to me. And I don't think it's impossible. I think it's possible they will do it. I don't think it's likely, but I think it's possible. And I would probably check it out. And that's saying something from a person who is not a PC or Western RPG gamer at all. So we'll see.
I don't know. Depends. I mean, I don't know who has the rights anymore. I just don't know. Like, it's been released in, like, I think it was called the Fallout Legacy Collection in 2019, but it was like, they weren't remasters. They were literally, it was packaged version. I think they probably used like DOS emulators or something like that on them. Like, I'm talking like releasing a modern polished thing, because here's the main reason why game compilations are important. And I am not talking down to younger audiences here when it comes to graphics, but yeah, looking at some old games that are beloved, especially for like old games that were released on early 3D systems, they're kind of rough in a lot of cases. Like, the graphics, they're kind of rough. And I totally understand why someone who is growing up playing, like, their first system being like maybe the 360 when they were kids, and like after that playing on the One or the Series X or the PlayStation 4 and 5, like, I totally understand why they would look at some of these older games and go, ugh, I don't even know if I can play that. I don't know how I would play that. So I think that remasters are super important to put that layer, to put that polish on them, to make them accessible again to audiences who actually didn't even miss them the first time, weren't even around the first time. And I think that's very important. And so long as these remasters and compilations are true to the original and the intent of the original, I don't have a problem with that. Like, we were talking about the Suikoden collection, which theoretically was coming out next year at some point. And we've seen screenshots from it. And the screenshots look great, but also they're the kind of screenshots, when you look at them, if you don't know better, you wouldn't even realize that they are like a remastered version of the game. Right. Because they look right.
They look like Suikoden. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think that you're onto something. I mean, I think that, like, I don't understand people who get upset about re-releases. Like, because like, if it's a re-release that is like crappy, like, I don't know, like Chrono Cross apparently was not very good. Yeah. Like, I get that. Because like, you want my $25 to play a game that I would just look better if I just played it on my PS1. Fine.
The Secret of Mana one that came out a few years ago that was a disaster.
Right.
Which oddly I think got a higher score than a retro review of a recent retro review of Secret of Mana. But let's ignoring that.
Sorry. It probably did. But
I gotta check that. Keep talking. I'm gonna look that up.
Anyway, my point is like remasters or re-releases or whatever, like, it, when they're done right, when they're done in a way like the Castlevania one was, whereas like it clearly it acknowledges and loves what the games originally were, but it also acknowledges like, hey, like, maybe you don't want to go for a half an hour without finding a safe spot again and just dying to some random ass enemy. Maybe you want to rewind 15 seconds so that you don't die to that random ass enemy. Like, I think that's fair. I think it's good. And people get upset about stuff like this, like with the Horizon Zero Dawn thing. Like, the Horizon Zero Dawn thing looks amazing. Like, it looks incredible. Like, I've never played those games. Like, I tried the first one. I didn't love it. But like, now I'm like, hey, that looks really good. Maybe I'll try it again. It's only $10 to upgrade. Cool. I'll do that. So people complain about stuff like that, or just people complain about whatever they can complain about. So yeah.
All right. To finish this off, I will say I have some good news for everyone out there. Secret of Mana, our recent retro review, got a 65. The 2018 widely panned version got a 65. So we hated it equally. That's going to please literally no one who hears this. One of both sides. Both sides are screaming right now.
Yeah, I haven't played Secret of Mana for a minute, but yeah.
If you're looking to mitigate the fallout of our Secret of Mana bashing, you can support us here at RPG Fan by buying stuff from us. You can find it at www.rpgfan.com/shop. Lots of things on there that you can find, mugs and t-shirts. You can also find our collaboration with Hyperplay RPG, the RPG Fan Review Card Collection, which is a showcase of nearly 300 of our review cards as seen on Instagram. I promise you, the Secret of Mana review is not in there. So absolutely check that out. I love this thing. It's a great, great book. It's honestly just really kind of cool to see my name on a review, a printed review. It makes me feel like I'm...
I know, right?
Yeah.
Every time I open that book, I'm like, I'm in print.
Yeah. It makes me feel like I was working for a game magazine or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. If another way you can support us is to listen to our past episodes of Random Encounter. As I mentioned earlier, last week was an episode out of time where Hillary and I did a random book club. We chatted about the Legends of Localization 3 Undertale. And that is an amazing book about localizing Undertale for the Japanese market. It is really cool. It's such an interesting examination of how, because there have been 2 books before this, one focusing on Legend of Zelda, the original NES version, and one focusing on Earthbound, and how those games were localized into English. And it was a really cool look at how English is then localized into Japanese. That was a nice reversal. So I highly recommend that book, and I highly recommend listening to that episode. There is also our other podcasts, one of which is Retro Encounter. I've actually been on the last 3 episodes of Retro Encounter, as it was Adventure Game Month or Short Game Month. I'm not sure what Solosi is calling it, but the games were Firewatch, which is one of my favorite walking simulators, The Case of the Golden Idol, which is one of my favorite mystery games, and last week was focused on Maniac Mansion Day of the Tentacle, which is one of my favorite point-and-click adventure games. So it's been a pretty great month for me and retro games, and if you are at all interested, check those episodes out. All of them are great games, and I think they were really, really great conversations too. We also have Rhythm Encounter, which is RPG Fans' music podcast. Last week, they were talking about some of the most inspiring RPG music out there. So if you have anything that you need to get pumped up, check that episode out because you're going to find some music that's really going to get you going. If you'd like to get in contact with us here at Random Encounter, you can fire us off a message at podcast@rpgfan.com. If you have any ideas for discussion questions, that would be terrific. I would love to, come up with some ideas outside of me and the staff. So please fire me off those ideas. If you'd like to send me an email, you can do so at jlogan@rpgfan.com. Zach, where can we find you online?
You can email me, zachw@rpgfan.com. I'm also on our Discord as ZachW.
Cool. If you enjoy this podcast, please share it with your friends to help us get the word out there. You can also rate us on iTunes or your other podcast player of choice. Zach, thank you very much for giving me your evening and for suppressing your exuberance about the lunar collection enough to be able to talk about something that isn't lunar.
I didn't feel like I was suppressing it at all, but thank you.
You managed to talk about Castlevania relatively coherently for the entire episode. So
that's fair,
yeah, I expect you just like suddenly in the middle of it be like, oh my God, I can't believe it.
Lunar!
Because folks, that is an exact sound that everyone at RPG Fan did when we saw this news. None of us expected it. Completely flat-footed.
Oh, yeah, I thought it was like Soul Reaver, and I'm not kidding. I just picked up my cat, and then my cat hit the ground. I was like, oh no, what? And Miles looked at me like, what are you doing, dude? I'm like, it's lunar.
And I'm sure your cat was like, oh, well, in that case, it's fine. Anyway, Zach, again, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was fun.
And also thank you for reviewing 3 relatively substantial Metroidvanias.
Yeah, it was a blast.
Cool. And I would also like to thank everybody out there listening. And whatever you are playing, have fun.